paper which had been issued by the man who said, what did he say? Boards that are boards that are noisy and only make political arguments will not receive a sympathetic ear. That was the delicate, sophisticated remark made by our Minister of Education when he got in a snit the other day because Coquitlam School Board said they were being dealt with unfairly after many years of attempting to deal with them reasonably. But the Minister is here this morning, and we're going to ask wonderfully bright questions like this. This is in his white paper. Are our public schools capable of responding to the many and varied needs of the people of British Columbia? And the answers are, tick them off, yes, no, or maybe, according to the circumstances. What standards should be established for all schools, public and otherwise? And the answer is the highest possible, of course. The next one is, to what extent should parents and other members of the community be involved with schools, and to what extent should schools be involved in the life of the community? And the answer is, to the maximum possible extent, of course. I am ribbing the Minister just a little bit because I have my own list of questions to which he will refuse to give any answers. That's for Mr. Heinrich. And then we have a man who has caused international trauma and who may well be reviled in parts of the world, in parts of Israel, because he wrote this extraordinary book called Vengeance, about the assassination squad authorized by a woman, Golda Meir, to go out and take revenge on the Israeli athletes who were murdered by the Palestine Liberation Organization at the Munich Olympics. And then, a happy little note near the end of the program. This is the day of decision for the BC Federation of Labour. It either comes out with a solid slate, or more likely it's going to self-destruct. And my peripatetic Schneider was around there yesterday nagging people. But first, for the Minister of Education, the Honourable Jack Heinrich, after the break. Peterson. To be quite serious for a moment anyway, to the Honourable Jack Heinrich, the Minister of Education, who is interminably in hot water because of his dogma and his dramatic behaviour to all school boards, what good will this white paper do? Will it not merely be the usual pressure groups appearing in front of this commission of 14 or 16 people, and in the end anyway, you will make the decisions based on the money that you have available for the schools?
Well, I think you're drawing a conclusion, Jack, right off the bat. First of all, why did this paper come to pass originally?
I don't know.
I'll tell you why. There have, for years and years and years, the people who are involved in education have been looking for a revision of the School Act to try to bring it into so it will be a current document and reflect exactly what is going on. Now, what I thought would be the best way to handle something like this is to allow those people who are involved in education to be the authors of a document and advance those questions which have been on their mind for years. So what I did was contact a number of people. We created an advisory committee to the minister to prepare such a document. And they had lots of freedom to do it. And all you have to do is look into the number of questions which they have raised. The questions which they are raising are not my questions. Yes, there are many questions there which I think are very interesting, and they're going to require some answers. Now, this particular group, and I am going to be appointing a Provincial School Act Review Committee. These people themselves are not necessarily going to be involved in the public hearing process throughout the province. On Sunday and Monday coming, we're going to have a number of people in, superintendents of all school districts, chairmen of board, presidents of local teacher associations. The whole format with respect to how the public hearings are to be held in each school district will be discussed at that time.
Each school district?
That's
correct. There are going to
correct.
be hearings in each school district?
That's correct.
How long is this going to take? Not that it matters because it doesn't mean much.
Well, I'm hoping it will mean a great deal. I want the hearings to be held in January and first part of February. I would like to have a report. The committee prepares a report with a number of ideas reflecting the concerns of the community by the beginning of March.
Do you want them to rewrite the School Act?
No, I don't want them to rewrite the Act, but you've got to remember that legislation ought to reflect what the concerns of the public are. Because
Okay.
after all, politicians, we're here to serve the public.
Sometimes wonder about that, but I agree that that's a general principle. Are there any teachers on the advisory committees?
Yes, I have on the provincial committee, what I'm referring to that as the Provincial School Review Committee, and I have published with the press release yesterday those who are involved, and there are 4 teachers who have been invited. I've received the acceptance from 2. I haven't received confirmation from the other 2 because it's going to involve a fair amount of time. And I just hope that
There were no teachers on the committee that wrote the paper, though. You didn't need them for that.
No, I'm not on writing a particular paper because it's involved with, the superintendents are involved in it. Superintendents were teachers, were administrators, and now have the lead role in each
So you're
district.
going to get a number of answers to various questions like this. Should the Act be amended to prevent the teaching of the saying of the Lord Prayer at the opening, whenever that is, whether it's once a year or once a week in school?
That's something.
You want an answer to that?
Yes. There are oodles of questions that can come up in which we would like to know what the views of the public are.
Well, let me give you some of the questions.
Yeah?
Should the strap be brought back?
Yeah, Mr.
Right? That's a question you want,
But I
isn't
want to make something very clear now. Getting this, I am not prepared to advance my views on any of those questions right now for a very good reason.
That's right, because you're going to make the final judgment and you're in the position of making a considered decision after you've had all of the argument.
Thank you.
I couldn't have
Thank
said
you.
it better myself had I been a social credit cabinet minister.
Thank you very much.
But I would have not have said, oh, will you talk to noisy school boards?
Now, let's put this in perspective. I understand that you took a few strips off my back
I put
last
you in
week.
the corner with a dunce's cap for your petulant performance.
You're entitled to do that. I want to make something very clear. We're dealing with a lot of money. Overall, something in the order of $1.9 billion.
Agreed.
I was here a year ago, and I watched and heard what you said a year ago about the school system. I thought that I would go back and have a look at the videotape, and I wanted to review your performance with me to see just how consistent you were over the year and what was going to happen today.
We destroyed the tape.
Well, I didn't destroy mine. And so we had a good look at it. Now, there's a lot of money involved. You know that we've introduced a funding system for school districts. For the most part, it's worked extraordinarily well. We made a number of amendments over the last year. Now, the frameworks that go out are very complicated. I cannot respond to any type of rhetoric. I have to have facts, and they've got to be advanced logically, and they've got to be supportable. In the letter which we sent out to all districts, and I released a copy of that without any names on it to the press so that they have a good understanding of what we're involved in. And in that particular letter, I made reference to check your database. It's very important because the database is what is used in order to calculate the funding which is required. We have done that, and what we're doing this time is exactly what we did in November of 1983. In November of '83, we issued the preliminary budgets. They were recalculated on the 15th of January the following year. In this case, it will be the 15th of January '85. And then the final budgets are determined. I think they have to be concluded by March.
I know.
So it takes time. With millions and millions and millions of dollars, you don't have the right answer right off the bat.
And you must admit you've put the school boards in very delicate situations because of your kind of changing of the framework of the year from time to time.
No, the 16 amendments which were made to the framework were all done as a result of dialogue which was extensive between the Ministry of Education, many MLAs, and school districts, their elected officials as well as their appointed officials. Each of those amendments made to the framework were all in the interests of the school district, every one of them.
Yeah, but I must say in defense of Coquitlam, their letters to you seem to have been reasoned, logical letters, a most prudent school district, and why you picked in Coquitlam, I don't know. What did they do that was political and noisy?
No,
I mean, I couldn't call them orangutan school board at all.
I will suggest to you, and I am not going to make comment one way or the other on any particular district and the way it handles its financial affairs, but I would suggest that we just wait and see. And I'll tell you why. Maybe eventually all of the evidence and problems which have been encountered will come out.
Social credit always has a little bit up its sleeve, though, to help in the rough spots.
No. Here's the. Now this is a valid point that I have to make with you.
But you always do have a little bit up your sleeve.
I have said this at the very beginning, that I have funding which is available to ensure that those who have exercised restraint and as a result of some event which has occurred, they are placed in a difficult position. We will try to help if we can. But Jack, the framework which is put out, and something which has never been done before, is that we publish the budget for all 75 school districts. They all know what they get, and not only is the total amount paid, we break it down so that every school district knows what they're getting in every function. And you cannot fiddle the system. You can't do it
anymore. No more switching.
You can't fiddle the system. If I turned around and made as a result of a political overture to me to make an adjustment to give a benefit to one particular school district, it has ramifications throughout the entire system. And then you would have legitimate criticism of me, not before.
All right, now, you've got all your questions out here, clumsily written by civil servants of Victoria. The whole thing
Which one?
Dull pedestrian reading. Your white paper.
Whoa, you're wrong already. You're wrong already.
This was written by...
No, which one, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at all the questions. I couldn't read the rest of the stuff.
No, look at those questions which have been prepared were written by a member on the committee. The only people on that committee were...
I was only making a cheap snide remark.
Cheap. But I've taken you seriously all my life.
Yeah.
But so maybe we better change this a bit.
Touché. I want to raise with you the things that the public is interested in.
Okay.
And these are the things which probably will not be addressed, as you politicians say, by the stuffed shirts who appear in front of your committee. So we'll do that after the break.
Well,
you know what I mean. Well, the good thing is that you're going to get a fairly early decision from this committee. What was the date you gave me?
Well, I'm hoping that they will be able to produce a consensus document of some kind in the first week of March.
And one of the questions which will be raised is, should principals come out of the union? And of course they should, shouldn't they?
I will wait to see what the what the views of the public are.
Right. No, fair enough. Okay. I'm putting forward matters for discussion by other people.
Will you hit one?
Should teachers have the right to strike?
That's another.
Should there be arbitration, because arbitration always means an increase regardless?
There is the issue on arbitration versus free collective bargaining.
That's right. And should the various bargaining agents in the schools be formed in a different manner?
Yes.
That's a very tough one for you, isn't it?
Yes.
Discipline. Should there be I was joking about the strap. I don't think even you would bring back the strap. But discipline is a matter which you want to be addressed to because of the incredible difference in the discipline and appearance of those in those independent schools, the snotty private ones, and the public schools. So you want dress addressed, don't you?
It's an issue which will be discussed, I presume.
Class size. Should there be a formula for the pupils in the classroom, not measured over all the other administrative teachers and whatnot, but in the classroom?
Yes, but can I add one item on that, please? This year, when we produced the preliminary budgets, together with the amendments to the framework, and I gave to the press everything, by the way. The press should know everything that I know. I also produced the service levels on which the framework is calculated. I distributed those to the press too. And when we established service levels in the ministry, for example, we will provide funding for one teaching unit, which includes not just the salary, the average district teacher's salary, but a number of other factors as well, for 22 kindergarten students. In elementary school, we will provide funding for up to the first 1,600 students in elementary school, one teaching unit for the first 25. Second 1,600, 26. Anything over that, 27. In secondary school, the figures are on 1,600 and over 3,200, 22, 23, and 24. Now the questions I say, if in fact classes are much larger, then I have this question, well, whereabouts is the money going? If the school districts can come back to me and say, Heinrich, we recognize what you are saying, but we believe that your service levels are too restrictive, then that's the level of debate that I want. Tell me where the service levels are wrong. These service levels have been published and been with the school districts for months and months, well, ever since we started.
That's good. Now, but for ordinary people's question,
yes.
Should English as a second language student, the ESL students, those whose native language is not
yes.
English, be in the same class as children whose native language is English? I'm thinking of a particular case put to me recently whereby there are 18 in a class of about 30, there are 18 youngsters who really can't speak English.
Yes, I know.
And then you've got the other 12 mothers and fathers who are frantic, they're not racist, their kids are not learning because all the time is spent with the second language students. How are you going to handle ESL students? That's another thing.
Well, right now there is a great deal of funding advanced for that very particular reason. There is one school district in all of British Columbia which has been concerned about this issue more than any other district, and their concern is legitimate. I'll tell you why. Because
Vancouver.
That's right, and they have most of the ESL students. So I understand that, and we did make adjustments to accommodate it.
I'm just raising, should there be tests for teachers? Because I've found in my own experience that teachers resent any form of monitoring or testing, either of themselves or their pupils, don't they?
The evidence which has been brought before me and my experience in a year and a half would indicate that might be the case, but let's see what the public has to say about it.
Are professional days a waste of time? Is that too common a subject to be dealt with by this?
No, look, it's open-ended.
Lord's Prayer we've talked about.
I want everybody, Mr. Webster, to take an opportunity to advance their views and not be intimidated in any way to advance their views.
Has mainstreaming been a success? Is there enough help for special education pupils?
I would say there. Well, that's you're asking rhetorical questions. I'm not going to give you the answers on this if you're referring to
But these are things on
paper,
which you want input.
But yes, that's right.
Oh, there's lots of them. Independent schools. Should we have independent schools at all? Diluting the whole educational effort. And you've got one theoretical question here. Should schooling be compulsory? My goodness gracious me.
I recognize that, but I am not about to fetter those who have been set up as a committee to ask these questions. If professionals involved in the education system are asking that question, I'd like to know why. And I am not about to restrict their freedom in asking any questions, and let them go and let the public tell them what they feel.
Here's one question which really threw me. Should individual schools, this is one of the selected questions to consider, should individual schools have their own governance boards with powers delegated from district school boards?
Interesting
what the hell
concept.
does that mean?
Well, I think what they're really getting at is this. And by the way, this has been my experience in the last year and a half too, is that the schools often feel that there's quite a distance between their plant and the school district office and their own the administration. And I
thought it meant giving them money to run their own school.
Oh, no, if you're talking about school-based administration, that's something else. You see, one of the issues that's been coming up and before me often is to advance to the principal more authority as well as more control over the budget for his school.
Here's one we'll never get.
Yeah?
Is the current system of political accountability satisfactory, or should new instruments of accountability such as recall of cabinet ministers and local initiative be considered? No matter what the recommendations are, that will not be brought in.
Hey, well, let's have a look. But I tell you that should unequivocally establish for you the credibility of the people who are involved and the fact that I did not fetter their views, or was I going to tell them which questions to answer. They make that decision. Now that's, you know, I'm taking a bit of a chance there,
You
right?
certainly are.
But what's wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with
right.
Dear people, all of whom are interested in education, have at the Minister of Education now, after the break. Do keep your questions short and sharp, and no niceties are required. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I am a parent from the district of Coquitlam, and I would like to know something. The parents realize that as a whole, BC has been asking for restraints. But what we're merely trying to do here in Coquitlam is flexing our muscles in a legal way and saying we think that we've had enough cutbacks as far as the educational system is concerned. If my figures are correct, we also realize that Coquitlam is spending the lowest amount of money per child in BC, or at least in the lower mainland. If we go any further, what type of education will my child be getting if I continue living here?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I can't give you specific answers with respect to, excuse me, the average cost within the district of Coquitlam at all, without giving me excuse me, an advance notice, and I'll do what I can to provide you with that information. But I would suggest that where a number of districts have exercised some degree of restraint with respect to the number of staff, the staffing requirements, that you may find that in the case of Coquitlam, they decided to reduce their maintenance and operations budget substantially and attempt to preserve almost a status quo position in the classrooms. Now, I'm also aware that, and as I mentioned last week, that we're interested in having some logical arguments that brought to us. I'm interested in having the people in Coquitlam challenge our service levels, and I do know that there is dialogue going on now between people within my ministry and officials within your district.
Thank you. Best I can do for you on that. We will talk about schools. We can't avoid some calls about districts, but we'll talk about the broad problem too. Go ahead, please.
Okay, my question is very simple, but it will require a little background. In 1980, the Minister of Education, Brian Smith, on a tour of the province, spent several months touring, several months assimilating all the information he had, writing a report which was very nicely packaged, 163 pages of recommended policy changes and directions for education in BC. I would like to quote two very short sections from that. School boards have the right to establish local educational policy and to provide governance for the local system. They have the corresponding responsibility to represent their constituents in policy making and to provide the kinds of enlightened governance that will allow professional educators to provide the best possible service. Boards are also responsible to their local electorates in matters of finance. The second short quotation, school boards are duly elected statutory taxation authorities, just as municipal, provincial, and federal governments are, and our system assumes that they will budget appropriately. They are fully accountable to the voters in their district. None of the various governments are required to submit operating budgets to referendums. No level of government is in a position to overrule the budget of another. That was published in 1981. Since then, we've had the Education Interim Finance Act, which stripped boards of their power to govern finance in their own districts. They have essentially no autonomy and therefore cannot be accountable to the local voter. We also have had local powers of taxation removed. The question is simple. If we go through the discussion in the next few months, what guarantee do we have that there will be any consideration given to that when decisions are made by the ministry?
Very good question.
That is probably the best question I will ever receive. And I think but I cannot give an answer to that in 10 seconds, Jack. But that is, without a doubt, will be the best question that you will get on this program.
But that question simply said that Brian Smith in his 163-page report laid out the responsibilities of a school board, their independence, their powers, and then he said, but you came along, the government came along and hamstrung those very principles laid down by Smith. And so what assurance has anybody got that you'll listen to anything and not act arbitrarily in the future?
It's perfectly valid. Now, in 1980, I would just suggest, since that time, there has been a significant change in the economic environment. There isn't any question about that. And we've got to remember we're a small part on this globe, and we are affected by what happens everywhere. One of the items that you should remember is that the spiraling costs in education were occurring, and they really began to occur very heavily in 79, 80, 81, and 82. For example, I note when we look to increase salaries, for example, to teachers and administrators climbed tremendously. I was just under 10%, just under in 1980, just under 14% or 13.5% in 1981, and somewhere between 17.5% and 19% in 1982. Now, my job right here was to preserve the public school system before we had a property tax revolt. In order to do that, government had to take some leadership and put a cap on expenditures. I don't think anybody denied that. As a matter of fact, the BC school trustees at the time, when the Education Interim Finance Act was brought in, said, we agree with what you are doing, it's appropriate at the time, but please give us some breathing space in 1986. I agreed with their point. I put a sunset provision in the bill, and by 1986, we should hope that we could then go back to having school boards have access to the residential base. Now, he's made another very valid point with respect to the part of taxation which was taken away. Yes, it was. It's the non-residential base, which involved commercial and industrial. But there was a reason for that. Many school districts in the province may have a large population, but they may not have a big industrial base. Those that have a large industrial base, such as pulp mills or gas plants or whatever it may be, may have a smaller population. Consequently, there's an inequitable allocation of funds as between districts for funding schools. Our job is to try to inject equity throughout all school districts, all 75. And that was one of the reasons why we brought in the framework, because we found inequities in the cost per student in various districts. Some had declining enrollments, others were going up, but they were caught in a jam. One of the reasons for the framework which we brought in, which required some adjustment, and I don't deny it, and I also do not deny it eroded some school board autonomy during this interim period. But we were requested to do that by many, many school districts who got tired of seeing others being, in effect, receiving the benefit of the doubt, receiving these funds at all times, and they themselves were suffering. So we've brought some equity in here, and I think overall it has worked reasonably well.
That's all right, as long as you give back a fair share of that equity which you've taken from the imbalance of the districts and give it back to all the system.
That's correct.
Your proportion for education has dropped. You've dropped $180 million without any increase in inflation since 1982.
Whoa.
On the budgets.
Whoa, just a minute. The budget, the overall budget for education has pretty well remained static. I will tell you, around the total cost of about $1.9 billion. You know, now that's number one. Number two, the budgets. When I appeared on your program I think it was either the fall of '83, spring of 84. I told you that we had reduced the budgets from 1.571 billion, and we were reducing it down to 1.551. It turned out in the end about $1.555 billion. You know, all of that hullabaloo that we went over, it was over something like, less than $20 million. This time, it has been reduced by something in the order of 25 to roughly, let's say, $25 million in the overall package. I'll give you, the figures are pretty clear. Last year, it turned out to be 1.554.673 billion. This year, it's going to be 1.524852 billion. So,
okay,
you got to watch that.
That was a good answer. That was an honest answer, that one. Right? Not that it's surprising to get an honest answer.
What else?
But I understood it. You admitted that you trimmed the autonomy of the
No
board.
question about it.
You had
I've
to
said
do
that publicly on innumerable occasions. That's one of the reasons that question is being asked in the School Act.
Would I dare to suggest that you're being politically noisy?
I beg your pardon. Are you saying that? What are
I'm
you saying here?
I'm using your own phrase. I don't know that I want to speak to someone who is noisy and only makes political arguments. They may not receive a sympathetic ear from me after the break. That's your... Go ahead to Jack Heinrich, Minister of Education in the Government of Victoria.
Mr. Heinrich,
Morning.
I think that you're trying to equate the quality of education with your funding, and they're both a little low. I'm interested in this questionnaire you talked about this morning. How many copies? Who gets them? Are you including university-level students? Are you including dropouts? Are you including people like me who are retired from teaching that are now taxpayers but still concerned about the quality of education?
To understand, are you referring to the hearings?
Yes.
Yes. No, the object is to have as wide as possible circulation as we can with respect to the report, and it will be available in your school district. And there is to be no taps on that report.
But she wonders if she can go to a hearing and make a case.
Of course. I would want you to go to a hearing, and my plea, to be honest with you, is that I would want everybody to go to the hearing, and I want them to tell the people at the hearing exactly what is on their mind. In addition to that, I might say, we're also preparing a response document which will go into the report, and the response document will allow people who are not comfortable making presentations at public hearings to send their report and their views to a secretariat which we're setting up, and the mailing address will be announced in due course.
Go ahead, please, from Kelowna.
Thank you. I'm a student at Kelowna College, and with the recent and proposed cutbacks to government funding to the colleges, it would appear that the viability of the college would be threatened in the near future if these cutbacks are to continue. I would like to ask Mr. Heinrich if he intends to close Okanagan College in the same way that the David Thompson University Centre was closed.
Well, I think there's a world of difference between David Thompson University Centre and the Okanagan Community College. First of all, yes, we are going through the budgetary process now. The problem with Okanagan College, the problem that they're having is that they have proposed the deletion of university transfer and I believe business education courses at two campuses, one in Penticton and the other in Salmon Arm. And I recognize that there has been a number of overtures made to me, particularly by the MLA for Okanagan, or Boundary Smilkameen, Jim Hewitt, and the MLA for Shuswap Revelstoke, Cliff Michaels. As a matter of fact, I will be in Salmon Arm later this morning, and Armstrong. No doubt those views will be expressed. We are facing some difficult times, and I'm going to do my darndest to try to minimize the pain in those areas. But you know, there's only so many dollars around, and I'm not really in a position to make comment one way or the other because the budget hasn't been determined.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, hello, Mr. Heinrich.
Where's the call
in these
from?
times of drastic budget restraints, do you feel that your own office should set an example of frugality to the public?
It has.
So, then how do you account for the fact that you're flying first class on a foreign airline from Hong Kong that amounts to something like $4,700 return?
No.
First class, mind you, not business class.
No.
Were you in Hong Kong?
Yes, I was in Hong Kong.
Did you come back in Cathay Pacific?
Yes, I did.
Did you fly first class?
What happened is this. I was they had assigned a seat there, and when I got on the plane, they said, okay, there's lots of room up here. We will upgrade you and put you in at absolutely no additional cost.
Patronage. You should have not accepted that.
Look, I can't help it. Where I am
very,
taking.
very privileged. I mean, to me it amounts to patronage.
Let me ask you a question.
Not me. I was sitting back there.
Well, I'm sorry.
Me.
I'm sorry, but when I'm taken to the airline and somebody assigns me a particular seat and where I go, the important thing is where they put me is up to them, but I am not going to pay for anything other than what I am permitted to pay, and you can rest assured of that.
Thank you, ma'am. In other words, you graciously accepted the the little benefit conferred on you by Cathay Pacific, who said, do sit in first class, we have empty seats.
Right, that's right.
Listen, I'd have done the same myself.
I guess.
Let's not double
I
talk.
mean, that's correct. That's correct.
I think that's fair game. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello, Jack and Jack. I just heard the minister there decrying the spiraling cost of education. But I don't hear him decrying the spiraling cost of his little circus down in Falls Creek there. That $300 million deficit we'll be staring at.
Is that a school?
This ALRT that no one knows how to pay yet. I think the minister should realize it's a matter of priority.
Ah, come off it. I mean, much as I don't care what anybody says to you, but I'm making a feeble effort to keep it on the topic. And besides, he was politically noisy, and he's not going to receive a sympathetic ear from me.
Hey, I tell you, you've made your point.
Go ahead,
I'm
please.
entitled to a bad day.
Yes, I understand from your discussion this morning that the justification for your action on the Public School Act is because of the questions asked by people in the industry or in the education field. You seem to not take responsibility for what you're doing, but by turning your responsibility over to those asking the questions in the educational field makes it look as if it's really it puts it out to me as a smokescreen that.
He's saying it's a smokescreen. You're
Yeah.
dodging responsibility. You're going to delay and weave with this broad white paper, which I call this. Let's talk education. What do you say to that, Jack Heinrich?
Well, I just suggest that what you do is examine my style, what I have done in the last 18 months, and you haven't got time in this program, but I can show you the number of changes which I think have certainly been helpful over a period of time. I'm not in this to create smoke screens. I can assure you of that now. I'm here to either do a job, and if I can't do the job, there's not really much point of me being here.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, yes. Mr. Heinrich, I might want to elaborate on one of the questions a woman has already asked. I am head of a parent group in a school in Surrey, and I know that our school has approximately 250 to 300 families represented by the children there. I would like a copy for every family in that school. And if I write to that address that you put up there, will you send them en bloc like they wouldn't do from Victoria for the last education white paper on graduation?
But this is, I think what you've got to make clear, Jack, is that this is really the terms of reference for your study group. And that what people will want is the report when the study group submits its report. Am I right?
Yes, that report, by the way, to give you another indication of the sincerity in which I'm advancing these views, that report will be prepared by the Provincial School Act Review Committee, and it's a public document. I may look at some of the things, I'll accept some, I may reject others. It's, that document will be public and made available by the committee.
I wanted to make it clear for you, for everybody's sake, that there's no point in people seeking a copy of the terms of reference, is there?
Well, I'm not so sure. I think that there are...
Well, can they get them?
Yes, they are going to be made available, but before they are published, I wanted everybody, and so did the committee, to have a look at what's in the document, because it's a draft document, and it will be people who are involved will have received it by now. Any errors, omissions, corrections, suggested changes will be reviewed by the committee.
Where can they get a copy of this?
I'm going to have to make, when I'm on the air like this, I don't want to...
make rash promises.
That's correct. And I think what's best is that I want it out. I want everybody to know about it. And I think the message that you're giving to me is something I must take back and say, how are we going to accommodate you?
Go ahead, please. Last call.
Yes, Mr. Heinrich, I got two questions for you. On the maintenance programs for the schools, do you hire any of the pre-apprenticeship students?
I wish I could answer that question for you, sir, but I can't. The hiring, as far as I know, of employees for the school district would be handled by the school district, period.
I'm afraid that's a kind of irrelevant question at the moment. Anyway, Jack Heinrich, Minister of Education, I'm grateful for your presence here this morning. You're flying to Salmon Arm today if the weather's good.
Yes.
Where are you to be when?
I was supposed to be meeting with a group this morning, which we had to put off to accommodate your program, and I believe I have to speak to 2 service clubs at noon, and then I'm meeting with a number of people in the constituency on behalf with the MLA Cliff Michael.
Okie dokie. My thanks to Jack Heinrich.
Thanks for having me on.
No bother at all. I gave you as sympathetic an ear as I could. Next.
I'm glad at least you tempered it.
George Jonas. Serious face. George Jonas, Vengeance, after the break. When this book, Vengeance, was published in May, it caused a storm of controversy. Some denials, it was challenged, it was denounced perhaps as not quite correct. It's an incredible story. It reads horrifyingly true. It's a story of how the Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service assassination squad section of it, went out to get even with as many of the killers of the PLO who slaughtered the Israeli athletes at the Olympic. Is that a fair summary, George?
That is a perfect summary. That's exactly what happened.
How is your credibility after 10 months? I know you've sold the film rights for some small paltry sum of $350,000.
That's what I
correct?
understand. That's correct.
How do you feel about the acceptance of the credibility of the book before we get into the story?
Well, there were three controversies about the book. A, did Israel send out anti-terrorist requests to kill PLO terrorists? It's the first controversy. The second, does the Soviet Union aid terrorism around the world? And the third, did my source, the person who told the story, tell the truth? These were the three controversies.
Well, first of all, the Soviet Union obviously aids terrorism around the world.
Well, I believe that. You believe that,
in the same way
but
as
it's
the
not.
CIA would do or MI6 would do in the bad old days.
In a much worse way. In a much worse way, the Soviet Union supports directly or indirectly a large number of left-wing terrorist groups around the world. I believe that that is true. You believe that that is true. A number of people will not admit it.
Well, let me tackle the first one with a straight question. Do you believe, as I believe is in the book, it's a long while since I read it now, it's 6 months, that Golda Meir, personally, that great woman, the president of Israel, approved and in effect gave the orders by her approval for this squad to go and kill?
Yes, I do believe that. I also believe that had anybody else been the Prime Minister of Israel at that time, other than Golda Meir, he or she would have done the same thing. It is on the record at the time of the Beirut raid in the early 70s, following one particular terrorist action. Golda Meir in Israel's parliament, the Knesset, said it was very marvelous. We killed the killers before they had time to kill again. This is on the parliamentary record, so I don't think that there is much dispute about that. I don't think that any other Israeli prime minister would have done any differently from Golda Meir.
No, it just seems a little bit off for Golda Meir to do it, although it's logical.
Golda Meir was very hesitant for a very long time. Israel is not a tyranny. Israel is not a totalitarian country. Israel is a beleaguered country. It's trying to defend itself. And even though the Middle East is very complex and there are many perfectly legitimate questions that arise in connection with the Palestinians, in my personal view, terrorism is invariably wrong. It's despicable to kill men, women, and children. And if you encounter terrorism, there are only so many things you can do. You can protest in the United Nations for what good that will do you. You can certainly try and remove the underlying political causes that give rise to terrorism, and that's a perfectly honorable and legitimate method, and a number of countries, including Israel, have tried to do that. But if it comes to a military option, in the short run, if you have to employ a military option, of all the military options available, I think that selective acts of counter-terrorism, that is to say the assassination of leaders, terrorist leaders, is the least likely to involve innocent bystanders. Unlike an air raid, unlike a military incursion, unlike even a blockade, which will invariably involve innocent bystanders, a selective act of assassination of a given terrorist leader is the least likely to hurt innocent people.
Very logical one. Now let's turn to this man, Avner, A-V-N-E-R.
That's the name I gave him.
Which is the name you gave him. How the devil did you find Avner, or how and why did he find you?
Well, I didn't find him and he didn't find me. My publishers got hold of his story in the summer of '81, and they did some reads about Toronto publishers Lester and Orton Dennis, and they pooled resources with Collins of England and Collins of Canada, and they researched the story for about 3 or 4 months. They thought that the story might well be true, and then they came to me and they said, do some further research, and I worked for a couple of years. I believe that his story is true.
And you met Avner?
Yes, I met Avner.
Is he still alive?
To the best of my knowledge, he's still alive.
Was he cheated out of $100,000 by the Mossad?
That's certainly his claim.
Now start at the beginning and tell me a summary of what Avner did and why he did it.
Avner was a young soldier. He took part in the Six-Day War. As a native Israeli, a so-called Sabra, took part in the Six-Day War. Afterwards, he was recruited by the Mossad, which is the Israeli Secret Service, and he was a low-level agent for a couple of years. And then after the Munich massacre in September 1972, he was asked if he would volunteer for a mission. And like most Israelis, when asked to volunteer for a mission, he said yes. And the mission turned out to be to go into Europe with 4 other selected members, all Israelis, patch into the terrorists' own network, sever all connections with the mother organization, and find and assassinate 11 people, 11 terrorist leaders. They were not the foot soldiers of terrorism, not the young students who throw the bombs or pull the trigger, but the lieutenants, the architects, of among other things, the Munich
Almost
massacre.
at the Carlos level.
That's right. That is correct.
In fact, Carlos figures in the narrative, does he not?
Very much so, very much so. But although he came into, he wasn't on the original list, because in fact what happened was that after they assassinated a man by the name of Boudilla in Paris, Carlos took over that particular branch of the terrorist movement that Boudilla was heading. In fact, he renamed it the Boudilla Commando.
An incredible study. They set out to kill assassinate how many
11.
named people?
11.
How
11.
many did they kill?
5. They killed 5, and they took a part in the assassination of another 3.
So that was 8 in all.
That was 8 in all, but some other people also died in the meantime. Were not on the original list.
Was anybody killed by accident?
Apparently, one member of their own team was killed by accident. Not that they killed them. A member of their own team died accidentally while preparing explosives.
What about, which countries did they operate in? They didn't operate in the UK, as I recall.
No, they did not. One of them was killed in the UK, but they did not. That wasn't their operation. One of them was killed in the UK, but they operated in France. They operated in Cyprus. They operated in Greece, in Italy. And that was really, they were not supposed to operate in the Middle East, and that's why when there was an assassination of 3 people in the Middle East, they didn't play a direct role in that, because they were not supposed to operate in the so-called confrontation states. The confrontation states are the ones immediately surrounding Israel.
That's important. Not to operate in the confrontation states, not to do anything too close to home which would bring a direct response into Israel itself.
Well, what happened was that before '68, the Palestinian movement committed acts of terrorism against Israel, but it was in the Middle East. It was in '68, with the first hijacking, that the Palestinian terrorists went international, and they started operating in countries other than Middle East countries.
More with George Jonas and Vengeance. And if you want to talk to George, I'll take calls, and I have some more questions to ask him after the break. George Jonas's book on Vengeance, this assassination squad of the Israeli Mossad, certainly is more cold-blooded in many ways than any of the John le Carre novels, is it not?
Well,
he was this young guy. How old was he?
At the time, he was about 26.
26. He'd fought in the Six-Day War, and all of a sudden he finds he's a killer, an assassin. How did he finally react to that? Because he took part in these 5 killings, didn't he?
He considered himself a soldier, an Israeli patriot. He doesn't have any regrets today. He feels that what he did was necessary. He feels that the only way in the short run to stop terrorism is to kill the people who are engineering it, who are responsible for it.
What was their slickest assassination? Who and what and where was their slickest assassination of the 5 you report in the book?
I would imagine that technically the slickest assassination was the killing of a man by the name of Hamshari in Paris, which was in the very early days of '73, who was blown up. He was an organizer and used the telephone a great deal to organize various terrorist activities. The Israelis held him responsible, being one of the people responsible for the Munich massacre, and they put a bomb in the base of his telephone, and when he picked up the telephone, it killed him.
And as I recall, they'd been in, they'd scouted around, they knew his movements, and they knew that he would pick up the telephone.
Apparently, they made sure that at that point he would pick up the telephone and he would be alone in the apartment. They operated under very strict instructions, apparently, never to endanger innocent people. That if there was any danger to any bystander, anybody other than the intended, what they called target, the intended person, to abandon the operation.
I wonder if they made the phone call that caused them to pick up the phone, Hamashari.
That is correct. They actually made the telephone call.
They watched him, he went in there, they made the phone call, he picked up the phone and blew himself to smithereens.
That is correct.
Fascinating. Give me another of the assassinations, how they did it.
Well, one of the assassinations in Nicosia, Cyprus, was the installation of a small pressure bomb under the mattress of a bed in which in a hotel, actually, where the intended victim, by the person by the name of Al-Khair, was sleeping, and they arranged it in such a fashion that all of these bombs that they used had actually double triggers. A certain action on the part of the victim would arm the bomb, and then it would be blown up by a radio signal. But it could not be blown up until the victim did something to arm the bomb himself.
Like bounce onto the bed?
That is correct. Lie on the bed, and they assured that he was alone in the room, and when he armed the bomb, they sent a radio signal and exploded it.
Was there any time during vengeance, during this period, which were the years from what to what?
Well, for this is one anti-terrorist squad. This is simply the story of one particular anti-terrorist squad. Obviously, there were more operating, and they covered the period roughly from very late 72 until 74, roughly a 2-year period.
What was the nearest? Were they ever in danger of being caught by the local security forces, whether it was the French police or the Norwegian police or the Cypriot police?
Well, there was one anti-terrorist squad operating in Norway that was caught. At least some members of that particular squad were caught in Norway and tried in Norway. According to my source, this particular team did not come even close to being apprehended by any local authorities. The closest they came was once in West Germany, when they, by mistake, got into a drug stakeout by the police, and of course they were released immediately. Their papers were in order. But that was their only actual encounter with Western authorities.
But do I remember the case at Lillehammer in Norway where wasn't the wrong man killed?
A man by the name of Bouchiki, who turned out to be a Moroccan waiter, was killed in mistake for Ali Hassan Salameh, who was, of course, one of the major terrorist leaders. Apparently, that particular team was after Ali Hassan Salameh, but the man they actually killed by mistake was somebody named Bouchiki. Whether or not he had anything to do with the PLO is not known.
It's a silly thing to say, but there seemed in the book to be a bit of a conflict of interest, in that there was a time when the Mossad assassination squad could have got Carlos. Am I right?
Well, not this particular squad, apparently at one point, since their operational instructions were to patch into the terrorists' own network, at times they shared safe houses in various Western cities with members of the various terrorist movements, and at one point they happened to share a safe house, according to my source, with Carlos. But of course they had no idea who Carlos was, and Carlos had no idea who they were.
And had they known each other, it would have been a disaster. No, Carlos played both ends against the middle, did he not?
It is very difficult to know exactly what Carlos did. There was an I don't know anything about it myself, but there was a recent I shouldn't say so recent, a couple of years ago, there was an interview, apparently gave an interview to a West German correspondent. And of course it's very murky. It's very hard to know. The only thing that is certain, that he was straight at the Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow.
Tell me,
no question about that.
Has the Israeli government taken official cognizance of vengeance at all?
The Israeli government has not taken official cognizance of any book written on the subject. Vengeance is far from being the first book or the only book on that subject. It's the only book where somebody tells the inside story of one particular team. But the official Israeli position has always been no comment or straight denial.
Let's try some phone calls to George Jonas now. We might find the odd ex-Mossad agent who is now settled down in Vancouver. Bound to be one here.
Shouldn't be surprised.
After the break. George, I must remind listeners who you are, if you don't mind being reminded. The last time you were here with the beautiful woman who was then your wife, Barbara Emile.
That's correct.
One of the brightest people in this country.
I think so.
And she and you, her husband, had written a book called...
By Persons Unknown.
Which was the story of...
The Demeter murder. Peter Demeter was accused and eventually convicted of murdering his wife, Christine.
And he has since then been charged again with some other...
Just recently, he was out on day parole, and he was rearrested and charged with conspiring, allegedly conspiring to murder his cousin's son.
While he was on day parole?
While he was on day parole, allegedly.
That's the accusation.
That's the accusation.
Go ahead to George Jonas.
Hello.
Just a minute. By the way, George, your accent is Hungarian.
That's right. I was born in Budapest,
You're
Hungary.
born in Budapest. Almost a natural secret agent yourself by your very background.
Some people believe that of Budapest people, but I've known some people in Budapest who were not secret agents.
Köszönöm szépen.
Szíves.
Hiszek Magyarország feltámadásában.
Excellent.
Hey, how's that?
Excellent. Very good.
Jack?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, listen, I'm watching your show, and I'm quite impressed with the fact that you have an author on there. But the unfortunate thing is that how can you believe what he's saying when you can't believe whether or not he's wearing his own hair? He apparently is lying about that too.
Pull it.
Can I pull your hair?
Well, by all means.
It's his own hair, you insulting man. I knew it was his own hair, and if it hadn't been his own hair, I certainly would not have been gauche enough to draw attention to it. It is your own hair. George Jonas has his own hair, and so do I. Pull it!
I confirm it.
Right. What a silly call, George. Go ahead from Duncan.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. We keep hearing about the terrible terrorist groups around the world that are backed by the USSR. The word terrorism means use of terror, doesn't it? Does it not? It's the act of terrorizing. Don't you think, number one, that the worst, the most horrible act of terror is the nuclear armed threat? Number two, you have to agree, I'm sure, that the U.S. backs and supports oppressive regimes around the world, and where torture is widely used.
Yes, ma'am.
Exports torture.
Yes, ma'am. But we do come to the point. You're stating self-evident,
Well, that's
accepted
it.
facts.
That's the point I'm making.
Thank you, ma'am. You made the point. Go ahead from Revelstoke.
Pardon?
From Revelstoke, go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, speak up.
Yeah, Mr. Jonas, when your book first hit the market, I was one of the people that dashed out and bought it immediately. I read the book, and to be quite honest, I was very disappointed with it. And secondly, after...
Can you tell us what you were disappointed with?
What were you disappointed about?
What was I disappointed about? Well, basically, I had great difficulty believing some of the stuff that was in the book. I can't honestly believe that this the man that was supposed to have given Mr. Jonas this information really was a member of the Mossad, because I think we're all aware of the fact that the Mossad is ultra-secretive, and if they were capable of doing what it was claimed they were doing to these so-called Palestinian terrorists, I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that our friend who gave Mr. Jonas the information would have never been put in a position where we could do this.
In other words, he'd have been killed by the Mossad.
Exactly. And secondly, you know, I'm getting very disappointed in this type of material because I also read Intrepid, William Stevenson.
Well, let's leave Intrepid on the side and deal with the first point you raised.
Yeah, why don't we deal with that? Of course, a number of people believe that intelligence agents don't talk. The truth is the exact opposite. They do talk, and they talk very often. We would not know any intelligence stories if it were not for the fact that somewhere at one point an intelligence agent will tell his story. When I was talking about the book in the United States, very often I was preceded on a show by an ex-KGB agent and followed by an ex-CIA agent. In fact, the CIA very recently had to pass a special regulation to stop ex-employees from telling tales out of school. Agents do talk. It is true that it is unusual for the Mossad, more unusual than any other secret agencies to have ex-employees who come forward. But Avner is certainly not the first one. Maclean's magazine pooled resources with the English magazine, the English paper, The Observer, to investigate the story, and even they came to the conclusion through their own sources that my source was an ex-member of the Mossad. The big question, the big controversy, was, did he play the role that he claimed to have played in that particular assassination?
I think perhaps
team.
you should tell me how he was done out of $100,000.
Well, it is his claim, and of course we don't have the other side of the story, that there was an arrangement made, the members of the team, that while they were doing that particular mission in Europe, sums of money would be paid into a Swiss bank account. Their accumulated pay, in fact, that their normal pay would be waiting for them when they finished the mission. And according to this man's story, when he eventually wanted to leave the service of the agency, he did not get that money that was his due. Now that is his story, and of course virtually all ex-employees of any secret services are big bureaucracies, and you can run afoul of a big bureaucracy as easily if you're an agent.
And if
as
your money's in
another
a
person.
Swiss bank account and somebody's got it in for you, they can soon whip it out the bank account.
Absolutely.
My thanks to George Jonas. And this book's still going like gangbusters.
It certainly is, yes.
Vengeance. You'll see it on the movies one of these days. And regards to Barbara Emile, first
Thank you
time
very
you see
much.
it. And oh, yes, there's something. Snyder's been running around again after the break. Today is D-Day at the BC Fed. So for a non-political scamp around the more normal bit of the convention, here is Mark Schneider.
Jack, in a few short hours, we're going to find out what everybody else here wants to know as well, and that's who will become BC's next labor leader. Let's wait for that to come in its own good time, but now let's go down and find out all the other things that are important to people, their secret agendas, their resolutions that they want passed, everything they've got on their plate. Part of it is what happens right on the convention floor. People buttonholing other people, trying to get their point across. Look here, Lauren Robson, Jack Webster would probably say you're one of the most dangerous labor leaders in British Columbia.
Well, I don't know what Jack Webster wants to say.
You're for Frank Kennedy, right?
We're for Frank Kennedy because we want to see the BC Federation of Labor do the job it's supposed to do of getting at and solving the specific problems that unions face.
Kennedy's the guy who's going to do it.
Kennedy's
But
the
he's
guy.
not as far left as you are, right?
Oh, no,
That's fair.
I don't agree with Frank Kennedy all the time.
Says something good for Frank Kennedy, right? Thanks a lot, Lauren. Now, come this way. The way they've got this organized is very clever. BCGEU, BC's largest union, has somehow carved out the biggest area right in front of the podium. To the right, very appropriately enough, that's where the IWA are. Hey, Jack, here's somebody that you should talk to. This is one of your favorite stories right now. Terry Smith.
Yes,
What's
Steve.
going on with Souk Forest Products? Give us an update.
Well, we have had some difficulties with the bank getting our members separation slips so they could get unemployment. Initially, they decided to pay that money out of the employee social fund.
And what's happening today?
They have changed that. Everybody basically is waiting for a labor relations board hearing, and that will probably determine where it goes. The plant is still down, it is still picketed, and it will stay picketed until we get some results.
You need support here.
Tremendous support.
Thanks a lot. One other thing we should clear up. Remember the story we did on Local 40? BCGEU is going to go after the hospitality industry. This is where Local 40 sits on the floor. Local 40, is that right?
Correct.
Are you still in trusteeship?
Yes, we are.
Means you're doing something wrong.
No, we're not. It just takes the time to get the new executive and the new people going so they know how to run this union.
Wait a minute. You've been in trusteeship now, I think, for 2 years.
Not quite.
September of 1982.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's over 2 years now.
We also advised our members we're going to get out of trusteeship in April.
And
the election is called for April.
And now it looks like BCGEU is going to be horning into your neighborhood. Is that right?
Well, we'll find out.
You don't like that, do you?
Well, we'll find out.
Have you told them you don't like it?
We'll find out.
And on the periphery are booths selling almost every kind of ideological point of view, buttons. What do we have here? What's this?
This is our union label booth.
Union label booth. You're selling union labels?
No, we're promoting to all our members and all consumers to buy union-made goods. Canadian union-made goods.
Like what? I mean, would it be on my clothes or something? How would you tell?
You would find your union label right in your suit right here.
Yeah?
That's your union label in there.
I got a union suit.
That's right. Now you know you've bought a union suit.
I did the right thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over here, Jack, here's some people who want to persuade you not to shop at Canadian Tire. Remember, those are the people who bring you Albert, right?
Right.
Why shouldn't we shop at Canadian Tire?
Because there's a labor dispute going on in Prince George.
One labor dispute at one Canadian Tire,
Exactly.
and you don't want us to shop at any of them.
Nope.
They're subsidizing them, sir. We have reason to believe that they're subsidizing the place that we have the dispute at.
Can I go to Alberta?
No, sir.
I can't go to Alberta. Don't shop at Canadian Tire, these guys say. If you think that Operation Solidarity is dead, think again. Excuse me. Operation Solidarity, you're alive and well. What are you doing?
Definitely. Well, what are we doing here?
Collecting quarters?
Collecting quarters, and we're distributing some of our information. We put out a lot of it across the province, and just giving some people some of the different things we produce for education.
You've changed a lot. You're not rattling the chains anymore, are you? You're not calling for a general strike, right?
But no, we're not. We're doing a lot of educational stuff and a lot of organizing in the community.
You're like a social service group right now, like the Rotarians or the Kiwanis Club, something like that.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
A little bit more ferocious.
Yeah, a little bit more ferocious.
Over here, these people have got a pet project. They want the caboose saved. You know that thing on the end of the train where the guys have coffee and play cards, right? That's what they do in caboose.
No, actually the caboose crew plays a very important role in the safe operation of trains. Visual observation, they check for hot boxes, they check for dragging equipment, any type of thing that would indicate a problem with the safe operation.
This isn't a real serious threat to the survival of the caboose, is it? I mean, it's just...
Yes, caboose plays an important role. It's a crew's role that is.
But who's planning on getting rid of it?
Well, both national railways are making moves to introduce an ETU device and a train unit, which will monitor
ETU,
brake pressure.
End of train unit.
End of train unit. Now this is a
and
little.
If they get their way, we're never going to be able to wave to the nice brakeman in the caboose. Is that right?
Well, the reason that brakeman's in the caboose right now is to ensure the safe operation of that train. Now, you may not be able to wave to him, but you also wouldn't have a safe railway operation.
Now, what do you want Jack Webster, everybody else watching this, to do to save the caboose? That's jobs that you want to save, really, be honest.
No,
right?
the jobs are protected by our contract. It would be repositioned to the engine if they were successful.
What do you want people to do?
Well, we want to inform the delegates here and the public at large the severity of the situation. There's a public hearing being held in Vancouver at the Hotel Vancouver January 14th. The RTC will be sponsoring it, and we'd like everyone to dig deep into the issue and just see exactly what's at stake as far as public safety is concerned.
Save the caboose, right?
Well, trains are safer with the caboose.
And what's your name?
Bob McDermott.
Thanks a lot, Bob.
Thank you.
Now, I know that these guys at this table here are working on resolutions. They say they're from a bargaining unit from Crown Corporations. It's very sensitive. They're not going to want to talk to me, but I can see they're working on resolutions. Will you say something about what the resolutions are or anything?
No, I'd prefer not to.
But you're working together to come up with something that you can sell to the rest of your delegates. Is that right? That's fair to say, right? Fair?
That's fair.
Think you're going to make it?
Oh, we'll give it a try.
See, it's like a little bit of a conspiracy. That's the best way to describe it. Hi. Can I stop you for a second? Can I stop you for a second? Can I stop you for a second?
Talk to him.
No, let's talk to you. What's the most important resolution?
Oh, I think there's any number of
you
them.
You don't have one.
The ones to deal with unemployment, I would think, are...
More jobs, right?
Yeah.
I'll talk to this guy. What's the most important resolution?
I agree. Unemployment is a major item in this country today.
The most important resolution that we have is about the unemployed.
Everybody says the same thing.
Well, it's a, it's a subject that the social credit government should get the message.
My favorite resolution has to do with Tranquil.
Tranquil?
Yes.
You want all those patients kept at Tranquil, right?
Well, I don't know
and
necessarily.
all the jobs saved, right?
I'd like all the jobs saved, and I'd like all the what's best for the residents to happen. And that may not necessarily mean that Tranquil stays open, but that the procedures that they take are in the best interests of the people that are there.
Now, Jack, I want you to meet one of the most mouthy people in the entire labor movement.
I'm a great admirer of Jack Webster. I'm not too keen on you, though.
And some people here have rotten personalities,
Your cameraman is a very fine-looking man, too.
Just ruined it.
I'm trying to work out, I'm trying to line up another candidate.
What's the most important resolution?
I don't...
You're a delegate. You can answer this question.
No, I can't.
Little knots of delegates continue to caucus to hammer out consensus on resolutions. But for the most part, it's all over. In a few hours, the ballots will be counted, and the BC Federation of Labor will once again have a leader. And it's really what this convention has been about. They hope to choose some one person who will lead them out of the confusion the Fed has been finding itself ever since the days of Operation Solidarity of 1 year ago.
Good for Schneider. He's coming along very well on these walkabouts. Just got to be a little more aggressive. However, tomorrow we'll hope to have the new boss of the BC Fed. We will have Mark Rose of the NDP here as their education critic, and we've got 3 American experts on the perennial topic of drunken driving and what they do in the States. And I'll be back tomorrow, which is Friday, at 9 a.m. precisely. Heinrich on his education white paper on check at midnight.
Still once more they would slow.
Education Minister Heinrich on education. Oh, silly bastard. What do you want from education? Watch Heinrich on Check at Midnight.